So the world is a worldwide neighborhood with neighbors on every side. Wherever you go, there is someone to love, the width of the whole world wide. Who is my neighbor? Where can he be? How may I help her say? She is next door and across the sea, and you meet him every day.
Hello, welcome to another edition of Good Neighbors. You know what? We're on our 98th show, I believe it is. Right. Pretty soon we'll be doing 100. That'll be a special occasion. Today we have a wonderful, wonderful good neighbor named Noah DeRosier.
Thank you, Tasha.
Who is an expert on fish of all kinds. And we thought it might be fun for those of you who either think about having aquariums or have one yourself to actually learn more about what it is to keep an aquarium and how to keep your fish alive and thriving.
Healthy and happy, right?
Yes. Thank you, Noah, for coming to be with us today.
Thank you, Tasha, very much. Many people say that they've tried to keep fish and they can't do it, and the fish die, or they don't understand, oh, I'm a bad fish keeper. And so I'm glad you invited me today, because I would love to help people be better at keeping their pets.
Good. So what's the most important aspect of keeping fish?
Well, what I would like to make sure everybody knows, if you want to keep an aquarium, you should know that the aquarium is the pet, the whole aquarium. You need to realize that when you have a dog or a cat, they breathe the air around us. So you don't have to keep the air clean. That's what your government does. That's how we have air pollution laws in this country.
Yes,
when you're keeping aquatic pets, you're in charge. You have to keep that whole water area clean, because the water is alive.
You're the environment.
You are the environment.
You're the Environmental Protection Agency.
When you buy and you want an aquarium, you have to realize that everything in that box has to be taken care of, not just the fish.
Yep.
And if you're taking care of everything as you should, the fish will stay alive.
Yeah, well, now I would think that would mean keeping it very clean.
Right.
And what's the best way to do that?
Well, you have to understand what clean means for fish keeping. Now, both salt and freshwater aquariums, the most important things you need to worry about when setting them up are the quality of the water from your tap that goes in there. There's a couple chemical parameters you should know about. pH, everybody's heard about before. It's acidity of the water. So either if it's towards vinegar or towards ammonia sort of qualities. That can affect how a fish breathes. It can burn their gills if you take a fish that's used to very alkaline or high pH water and you put them in low pH water. So you want to know what comes out of your tap, because there are a few things you need to avoid. In addition, towns will add chlorine to water to kill bacteria that would grow in the water and pipes, so you can drink it safe when it gets to your house. But this will also burn a fish's gills. So you want to know what your local water is, and towns will put out water reports. So that's the first thing you want to know, what kind of water is going into your tank.
And can you test that for yourself? Are there kits that you can test it with and such like?
There are, although the biggest, for example, you can get pH measurement strips, simple little pieces of paper that can just be dipped in the water, and they can tell you what range the pH is.
Yeah, we used to use those in our hot tub.
You can usually you buy them for various ranges. So the ones that would be used for an aquarium.
So the fish ones probably come from the fish store.
Right.
Or the pet store.
Right, it's a specialized product, but there's no need for it in particular. So, but the other thing, you don't need to test for the chlorines or everything, because you can buy a very simple product that just takes those out of solution.
Okay.
It actually chemically reacts with them and neutralizes them.
Okay, so the first thing you want to do is make sure the water is really good.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, every kind of fish that you could want, there's so much literature out there, you can find out what your starting water parameters should be. pH is one of your only concerns, and as long as you're using conditioner.
Well, now, saltwater fish and freshwater fish, saltwater fish, would you have to go to the ocean to get the salt water?
No, you can actually buy salts, commercial salts, evaporated seawater, salt to mix in with the water on your own.
Okay, so you could use tap water
as well.
As well. Okay, that's a good thing to know. I didn't realize that.
But to keep the rest of the tank healthy, the two other things you always need to think about after that initial water, so okay, now you have your water in there. It's a living, breathing creature after that. You need to keep bacteria in the system alive.
Right.
So to do that, you need to be providing oxygen, which just happens by making sure there's water motion. As long as there's water motion, the oxygen diffuses in at the surface of the tank and can get carried around everywhere. So as long as there's water motion. And you also need to worry about nitrogen cycling. Now this just sounds a little bit complex, but what happens when fish food or fish waste breaks down, it pollutes the water. And bacteria are responsible for eating that and breaking those chemicals, breaking those organic molecules, those foods down. Now, bacteria need to grow. When you put new water in your tank, you don't have those special bacteria growing anywhere yet. So if you put these fish in and they start making a mess and there's no bacteria to break down that mess, it eventually poisons the fish.
Poisons the fish.
Because they just, the wastes accumulate.
Yep.
So you need to monitor something called the nitrogen cycle, which is an indicator of the levels of bacteria in your tank. And that's what takes patience. The best way to do that is to buy a simple test kit in the fish store. And they make them for testing ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate. And what happens is fish food, big food molecule, big piece of fish flake, bacteria break that down into ammonia, same like household ammonia, cleaning ammonia, toxic to fish. Another group of bacteria break that down to nitrite, toxic to fish. The last group of bacteria break it down to nitrate, which some of you might know as plant fertilizer. And that is not toxic to fish for the most part. So you need to make sure they're moving down that pathway. And when you buy a test kit that measures each of those three, and you test daily while your aquarium is set up and running, you can watch. If you were to, say, graph out the results of that test, you could watch first as there'll be an ammonia spike, and then there'll be a nitrite, the chemical in between, as the ammonia is breaking down. And then when the bacteria grow to eat the nitrite, there'll be a steady growth of nitrate.
Good. So you need some kind of a device also to put oxygen into the water to make it move around.
That's true.
And you've got some examples of those here, I believe.
I do. So a non-chemical way that we can break up fish keeping and filtration is to look at it in a systematic way. In that sense, there are three kinds of filtration. There's a biological filtration, which I just described with all the bacteria breaking down in that cycle. There's chemical filtration, because there are some molecules that can be harmful that can't be broken down by bacteria very easily.
Right.
And there is mechanical filtration. And that is when you have big pieces of fish food around in there, you don't want them drifting around the tank all day.
Right.
So most filters, most devices that move water around aim to achieve all three kinds of filtration. So, for example, this is probably the most simple kind of filter out there.
Looks like charcoal in there.
That's what it is, charcoal.
Charcoal is a great filter.
It is. You might have had it to use it before in any kind of household uses, or you've heard about it. Doctors using it for overdoses or poisonings. So, charcoal in this sense is, well, let me explain how this actually works first. So this filter, which isn't made for a large tank, it's for something smaller, very simply works with air. So you can buy a standard air pump, and this actually creates air, and you run tubing out of this and into this little filter, and it sits underwater, full of water, with air pumping down to the inside, and then the air bubbles out this hole.
Right.
Now what that does is the air leaking out all the time, all those bubbles going up, they're pushing water out of the way, so it actually creates a current of water that goes in. You're using air to make water movements. Now,
which is kind of what nature does in a way.
Yeah, exactly. That's all this in when air would blow waves and cause evaporation, and rain will come down on the mountains, and
Right.
rivers flow. Really,
Yep.
it's all responsible
And
for
so we're just
movement.
imitating nature here with this
We're
little,
doing the best we
little
can.
device. Yeah.
That's the idea. This is supposed to replace the home of those creatures that you're taking out of the wild, so or from a farm. So as the water goes down in here, this first layer is just filter floss, like what might be inside a teddy bear. And that is the mechanical filtration, because any big piece of fish food can't go through there.
Right.
So it stays there. The next layer, carbon, will be your chemical filtration. So
Right.
any of these molecules that are persistent toxins in the water,
Yeah.
they get stuck in the carbon. They actually attach to it.
Wow.
And this last layer is just more of that teddy bear filler, that filter. But now that there's cleaner water, it's not full of particles, what you're, all that is a home for bacteria. It's just got a lot, now that all that filter floss in there, all that teddy bear filling, it provides a lot of surface area for these microscopic bacteria to grow on.
Yeah.
So in a simple little device, a little plastic cube, you're getting all three kinds of filtration.
That's excellent.
And then once every few weeks or so, you just take the top layer off that has all the scummy particulate mechanical waste and just wash that off.
Good.
Oh.
Excellent.
Right.
Sounds pretty simple.
It is. Now, this is air powered, and it works really well for smaller tanks. Something like this, you might not even need a filter. Look at this. This is a little baby tank.
Uh-huh.
This is only 2 gallons, actually. But these are mass produced, and you can get one of these just as easily as you can get a 10 gallon. So something like this would work for anywhere between this size and this size. And a lot of fish breeders use them. So there are some people in the hobby that like to grow their own baby fish at home. And this is a very low current way to do that. But they do make aquariums that maybe 5 times as long as this.
Right.
And for those, air-powered filtration is not going to
No.
do the job. So there's a couple of other ways. This device is called a power head. And it's just a pump. It's just a pump that intakes water directly from the tank. See if I can get that out there. And blows it back directly into the tank.
Uh-huh.
But you can, this is a customizable device in that sense.
I see.
You can attach it to any sort of job you'd like to give it. So, some people in very large tanks, they need these just to keep water motion at the surface for the oxygen. But other people, they want to make it a filter as well. So you can buy an additional canister that attaches right onto the bottom. And this is actually the same as this.
Principle.
Same principle. It's got this filter floss, this teddy bear fiber in there.
Right.
And it has carbon in the center. And you plug it into the wall, and this actually works on a little propeller on the inside is actually sucking water through there. And that way you're delivering a much more powerful flow. So
Well, now does that little one that you showed us earlier, does that have an electrical component as well?
only you need to hook up the air pump.
Just the air pump part.
And there's
okay.
some tubing that connects the pump to this.
I understand. Okay.
So you do need to plug in the
All
air
right,
pump.
but this is actually going to move the water.
This is a lot more powerful because inside of this power head, there's actually what they call an impeller, but it looks like a little propeller. You can see that?
Yep.
And they're actually very cool because this is a magnet. So if you can feel, you can see how that,
Oh,
if
yeah.
you pull on that,
Wow,
pull on this
interesting.
piece here,
Yeah, right.
it's stuck in place.
No, I can feel it. Yeah. Woohoo!
As a result, they're
Wow.
very safe machines. You know, it's good that we have modern technology because there is no part of this device that is open to, you can't get electrically
Can't
shocked
get
by it.
electric. Yeah, right.
So this
That's
moving
great.
part, which is powered by this device, is powered by a sealed magnetic loop on the inside. So it's a very safe thing. But it ends up being more powerful because you actually have a propeller driving the flow.
Yeah, wonderful.
Now this is how all water pumps work on that principle with that. So
Now you have that great big thing there. Now what's that about?
this, it does the same job. But this is made for larger and larger tanks.
Larger and larger. They must be huge.
Oh, they are. This one, we had this one running for a 60-gallon tank in my mother's house when I was growing up.
Uh-huh.
Now, this is the magnetic power source base that runs the propeller. And we'll pop off the lid here. Normally, the way this is hooked up is to one of those large tanks, actually, is these tubes run up to deliver the filtered water back to your tank. There we go.
My goodness.
And this sucks the filtered water out of your tank. So
But
it'll be behind and underneath your tank, under a table, and all you'll see in the tank are
wouldn't be
these
visible.
two
Yeah.
arms.
Now, is there an advantage to something like this over the one that you just showed us? The smaller one?
Efficiency. If you bought 5 smaller ones, you would need 5 smaller ones to do the job of this large one.
Oh.
So it's about electrical efficiency, it's about filter efficiency, and about the cleaning amount that you have to do.
So you wouldn't have to clean as often if you had a bigger pump.
Well, you wouldn't have to clean as many. You'd probably have to clean as often, but you wouldn't. You'd only have one device.
I see.
So-
So those pumps, they're not good for 50-gallon tanks. Those little ones that you, the earlier one that you showed me?
Alone, they wouldn't be. You'd have to use them. They wouldn't give the right amount of circulation.
So
So you
how-
need to put them in conjunction with another one.
So what size would that tank? What size tank would that be good for?
It all depends on what you really want to keep and how much waste is being produced by your fish.
Yeah.
So one of the points we haven't discussed is what kind of animal are you looking for? If you know what you're looking for in a pet aquarium beforehand, say you saw your brother's cichlid tank or your friend's coral reef aquarium and you wanted one of those, that's very good to know beforehand. Not only because it's a responsible idea for your pets,
Yeah.
because you want to know how to take care of them, but it's a responsible idea for your wallet because you'll go out and buy the wrong equipment.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you're going to keep one big messy fish in a big 50-gallon tank, you might need something like this, which these can be quite expensive as well. And your decision is based on how much waste is produced and the flow rate that the filter can produce, how much water movement there will be. But if you're just going to keep a similarly large tank for waving freshwater plants, you probably won't need a filter that can handle that much waste. And you might be able to get by with a simple little one like we showed you
But you wouldn't
before.
have enough for fish.
You wouldn't have enough for a big fish or a lot of fish.
Oh.
But
2 or 3 fish?
2 or 3 fish of a certain small size.
50-gallon
So,
tank?
a 50-gallon tank. It depends. Everybody, you can do very different artsy
Yes.
things with your aquarium. So-
Well, I understand that, but I was just trying to, you said, for instance, that that little filter was good for a small tank up to that size,
It depends. It depends what you want. So
generally speaking.
when I used to actually grow angelfish, which I'll show you a picture of angelfish. But I raised them from babies. And when you hatch them out, they are too weak. They can't swim very well. And so they need very low flow. But they still need some of their water cleaned. They need some of that water moved and cleaned. They need oxygen. They need clean water. So this tiny little filter in this 10-gallon tank will do enough. It won't have them swimming everywhere. So tiny, weak fish, not a lot of waste production.
But let's say you have bigger fish, would you use that second filter that you showed us?
I didn't bring a filter that was in between the two. That's the problem here. But they do make
Well, what about the one that you showed us? I mean, that's not...
this one. It looks like it could be, but this is actually a very powerful pump. Now they make these in all sizes.
But you said that was not enough for a 50-gallon tank.
Well, this will be too much for this one, but they make this is a 10-gallon, and there is they make 20-gallon, 30-gallon,
I see.
40-gallon.
Okay.
So I might use this one. For example, I might use this in a 20-gallon tank to power a different kind of filter, or a 30-gallon tank to power a different kind of filter.
I see.
So.
I see. Okay. I think we should talk about salt water versus fresh water versus natural, because those things are very important to people. Like, for instance, I thought most interesting thing you said to me was, when we were talking about this, was that you could have an aquarium with not tropical fish.
Of course.
Right, but you know, when people think aquarium, they think goldfish. You know, they think something fancy with flowing ends of things.
They want to see very good colors and stuff like that.
But you could actually have an aquarium that had like little guppy, local guppy kinds of things that weren't very colorful, and they could be just as entertaining and friendly and
something that it depends where you are in Massachusetts, New England, the U.S. But are you familiar with pumpkin seeds, kivers, sunfish? Have you heard of these names before?
Sunfish, I've heard of.
It depends. Bluegills.
Yeah.
These are all names for one kind of fish that we have in our local New England ponds and rivers,
right.
and lakes. And it just depends where you are, what they call it. But they're actually very pretty. And if you don't have a lot of money to set up one of these systems, then I would say the way the hierarchy goes is local tank, which is what I call fish that are brought in from your local pond.
Right.
Then freshwater aquarium that you buy the fish from the store, and then saltwater. Saltwater is very expensive for the most part.
And yeah, the fishes themselves are very expensive.
They can be. Even in saltwater, for example, a Nemo, a clownfish from that movie Finding Nemo, the orange with the white stripes, even when those are raised on a domestic fish farm in the USA, in Florida, the standard price for those when they're very young is $15 to $20. So.
Yep. And one of the things you talked about, which I thought was very important for people to know about, was the farming of fish. Is the farming of aquarium fish, and we don't think much about that, but that they're not as strong initially anyway, because they don't have the competition. Just like the salmon, the farm salmon is always very fatty because they haven't had a chance to swim it off in competition.
Well, that is true. So most of the freshwater aquarium fish that you buy in the store are grown on farms in usually Southeast Asia. There are some places in Florida, but
It's
Southeast
funny to
Asia,
think your fish
cheap
come
labor.
from Southeast Asia.
They get shipped right over from Thailand. So big, large quantities of fish. Now, most of the saltwater fish are actually still collected from the wild. There's only a few, like clownfish and other fish that lay eggs on the bottom that are very large. Those are easy to farm. But most of them are still collected in the wild for saltwater. Now, so what I was saying earlier about competitiveness, if you set up a local tank and you just go catch, which is a learned skill, but if you go catch a little sunfish, that sunfish has been actively in competition and living in that water for generations.
Right.
When you buy these fish from the pet store that come from Southeast Asia, they've been in a factory conditions for generation after generation, and they are shipped over en masse on these cross-Pacific flights, and they're grown in high-density conditions. And as a result, I'm not saying that they're not hardy fish. A lot of that treatment can make them more adaptive, more hardy. But because of the trying times they're going through to be shipped and to have to live in those conditions, when you buy them, they might be sick already. A lot of them are sick already.
Like puppy mills. You know, you're never supposed to buy a puppy from one of those puppy mill type stores, pet stores, because they often have terrible problems.
Right.
Because they just move through quick, and it's not a very good idea. You should buy from a reputable breeder.
And it's just as you suggested in that sense, or you hinted at, it's because they move too quick.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of good pet stores, and if you form a good relationship with your local pet store, you can find out if when they receive these fish from Southeast Asia that have had a trying journey, have they given them appropriate time to rest?
Right.
Then you can see any health problems, you can treat for them, or any fish that are just sadly going to die will die before they get sold to you.
Will die before they get sold to you.
So,
Exactly. Then you're not watching your fish some morning floating belly up and going, what happened? What happened? My fish has died. Oh dear.
Yeah, you wouldn't want that.
You also said something very interesting, I thought, having to do with relationships with your fish. You can have relationships with your fish. I mean, actually, they become pets.
Well, they do. People may get into fish keeping because they think it's cheaper or they think it's easier, but they may discover over time that they become a lot more attached than they thought they could be. Now, as I mentioned, I think on our last talk, there's about 30,000 species of fish in the world. So this isn't like a dog, which is one species, a domestic dog, or a cat. The behaviors between each species of fish that you could buy
are very different.
Can be as unique as between dogs and cats.
Interesting.
So there are some fish, big goldfish or koi, that you can have for years, that will live for years and years and years, and may develop independent personalities. A lot of large fish that come to expect you at feeding time, they associate you with their feeding, with their food. So when you walk over to the aquarium,
they'll swim
right up. They get very excited, and that does a lot for a lot of people.
Interesting to think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Funny. Do you know that we hit the 5-minute mark already?
Have we really?
Yes, we have.
Let me see. I want to make sure there's nothing I haven't missed out on.
Yes,
for everybody to
well, that's why I
understand.
told you. I thought you might want to know. Plastic plants versus real plants.
Real plants are going to take you a lot more work. There's actually I have all sorts of literature I was going to show how diverse the hobby is between different angles of it, but I didn't have time. So, for example, there are publications for people who are only obsessed with live plants. But live plants will require additional care. To keep a plant alive, they need carbon dioxide, and they need fertilizer, and they need lots of light.
Yeah.
So it's another thing you'll have to factor in if that's what you want. Plastic plants,
but fish
easy.
eat them, right?
Depends what kind of fish.
Oh, I see. So you could get fish that wouldn't eat your plants.
That's true. There's plenty of carnivorous fish.
And they wouldn't mind?
So
I mean, the fish wouldn't mind if the plants were there and they couldn't eat them?
It makes a more natural, it makes a more natural environment. They can be some of the most beautiful aquariums that you can see is these nice planted tanks with 3 dimensions and waving real growth. So.
It sounds like one can have everything from just a simple couple of goldfish in a little aquarium to something
with a
really
SpongeBob
fancy.
SquarePants decoration or so.
Really fancy, huh?
Yeah, and to something that is imitating as a natural coral reef as best as you can. So.
Golly. There's a lot to be keeping in an aquarium, and that's a fact.
Yes, there are. And it's not even limited to fish. There's crabs you can keep, and there's sea stars, and it can be a very, very...
We're down to 2 minutes.
Hobby.
I want you to say, what is it that you would like, what thoughts would you like to leave our audience with about fish keeping?
Don't get frustrated if you've done it before and you don't seem to be able to keep the fish. A little bit of reading about the bacterial system in there and a proper test kit so you know how the whole life of your tank is doing will help you through, and you should be able to keep your fish healthy as long as you're paying attention to the aquarium as a whole ecosystem.
Well, you know, I thought that was, when you said the aquarium is the pet, that I thought was very telling. Because if the aquarium is the pet, not just the fish, then you're minding the quality of the water, you're minding, you know, and you have these test kits and you can check. And what happens if you go away for a while?
As long as the bacteria are established and the fish are in there, fish can be very versatile.
Should be okay.
Some fish can survive weeks without food.
Okay.
So there's differing opinions for every...
And they always say you mustn't overfeed them.
Definitely not, no.
Yeah.
No, fish will beg all the time.
They'll beg.
They'll beg.
I love it. They'll beg.
In the wild, they're limited by food availability. They're always looking for food. So at your house, there's many more health benefits to feed sparingly, maybe once a day. And,
don't pay attention when your fish beg. Huh?
There you go.
That's very important. So. Oh dear. Well, we're down to 1 minute. I must tell you, Noah, it's such a great thing to have you on my show.
Well, I really enjoy getting to talk about all these things.
I want to think of more things to have you come back. This is so special.
We've run a pretty large gamut of aquatic biology and responsibility.
Yep.
And
Well, you know, it would be fun to see some real fish sometime, and maybe we'll do another show after you get back from your talk. I assume you'll be back one of these days.
Or sometime in the spring when
Yeah.
we can actually have those sunfish
That
in
would
a
be
tank
so
right
special. I'd love it.
So,
I'd love it.
that'd
I
be
love
great.
it. Oh, Noah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tasha. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, it's my pleasure, really, all the time. Always my pleasure. So we will say thank you to our audience for looking at our show, and I hope that we've been of help to you. And if you'd like to give us a call sometime and tell us how we do, we're always happy to hear. Just call the station and let them know that you like the show. That way we'll know what more you like. So you take good care,
and you
bye
meet
for now.
him every day.